Hello, everybody. Imagine the pleasure of me twice in one night. Hot dog. Well, here we go again. And no matter what I say, make sure you listen to Andrew, right? He's the better half. Okay, risk management. Quick summary. Most of it's done in planning. From planning risk to identifying risk, performing qualitative analysis, which you always do, quantitative analysis if you need to or have time to, and then plan risk responses. In executing, you are implementing the risk response, and in monitoring and controlling, you are monitoring risks. Now, risk management is one of those things that, again, brings back to mind the language, process, and philosophy of questions on the exam. By philosophy, by process, when are you identifying risks? Well, in the planning process group, in the process called identify risks. But philosophically, you are always identifying risks and then kicking them back to that process, okay? Risk management. Remember, risk, by its shortest definition possible, is an uncertainty. And it's not, so it is an uncertainty. That's the shortest possible definition. We just don't know if it'll happen, right? It's an unknown, right? But the objective is to figure out if there are positive risks that we can, like reducing our estimates in cost or schedule, or finding the negative risks and decreasing them, also reducing estimates, right? So a risk can be positive or negative, right? It can be a threat, which is negative, or an opportunity, which is positive. And we want to maximize the opportunities, minimize the risks, okay? So the PMBOK guide gives us these 7 processes. Remember, your plan risk management is your typical how I'm going to conduct all of these processes in detail. And it becomes then, when I'm done, I get a risk management plan, and that becomes my subsidiary plan, one of them, to the overall project management plan. Then in the process of identify risks, I am going to identify all risks. That's a test answer. All risks. Even though I'm going to keep looking for risks. When I find them, I'm putting them back here in identify risks, right? And starting the process over. So this is identify all risks, including the sources of the risk and the risk characteristics. I even want to begin to identify who I think might be the risk owner. I will always do qualitative analysis next, and that's a subjective probability and impact meant to prioritize my list of risks, right? Which one's more important? Which one has the higher probability and impact? Now then I may do quantitative risk analysis, which is considered on the exam a numeric probability and impact. Now I can use numbers for both of them. It's just one is based on expertise. It's done fast, and it's good enough to prioritize. The other is going out and getting market research and other data to support your decisions. Then we want to plan risk responses for only those risks with the really high probability and impact. And we want to then implement those plans if they happen, the risks, and monitor always, okay? Remember, I said risks, they are an uncertainty, by definition, are either an opportunity with positive value or a threat. And so one way, for example, just as an example, are the estimates, right? Reducing them creates opportunities and reduces threats at the same time. It's about controlling our baselines, right? So we might estimate resources, schedule, or cost a little better, okay? Now, remember, definitions are also important on the exam, and the definition of risk management follows the very process of the processes. So if you forget what risk management is, just think of the 7 processes you memorized when you memorized page 25 of the PMBOK guide. You'll plan risk management, identify risk, do qualitative and quantitative analysis, risk responses, and implement risk. So risk management, which is planning, is identifying and evaluating, and that involves these three processes, and planning responses. And then, of course, you have to monitor them, right? The definition of risk management, easy. You're thanking me already. It's okay. No need. I love doing it, and I love working with you guys, as does Andrew. Now, we also said that stakeholders have always been central to our success. They give us requirements, quality standards, success criteria, risks. They give us assumptions and constraints. Goes on and on. We also, though, here in risk management, need to assess their probability and impact. And so we need to know their risk appetite. That's down here. That's the risk they're willing to accept. That's easy. Then there's risk tolerance. So they might be willing to expand their sense of risk a little bit for the right reasons or with the right mitigations. But then there's the risk threshold. Never verboten will they go beyond that. Now, when we build our risk breakdown structure, we're going to add categories to the risk register, which is the output of identify risks. And so we're going to build a risk breakdown structure based on those categories. It's an RBS, not to be confused with the other BSs. Ha, ha, ha. It's too funny. An OBS, which we learned in resource management, is an organizational breakdown structure. An RBS in resource management, which is a risk breakdown, a resource breakdown structure. We have the RBS here in risk, which is a risk breakdown structure. We also have a WBS from scope management, which is the work breakdown structure. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, when I identify risks, I'm identifying all risks. There are really only a couple of inputs here, but we give a bunch of examples of where you can find risk. And this picture here kind of illuminates all of those examples. Also, when I identify risks, I think I mentioned, but I want to say again, we nominate risk owners. And we may even write down, just real quick, what we think might be our response, right? Ask the people who looked at the problem. Now, this are the 7 processes in risk management in a single picture. I'm going to plan risk management, which is going to give me my risk management plan, a subsidiary plan to the project management plan. Then I'm going to do risk identification, which is all risks. I even identify a category, potential owners, and potential responses. Then I need to take that list and prioritize it. So I'm going to do quickly qualitative analysis, which is a subjective but substantial subjective probability and impact. The word subjective will be on the exam. So I multiply this P times I, and I can get a rank score to realign those risks. I may do quantitative analysis. It's laborious. So if I have time, I will. Otherwise, I may go right to risk response planning. What if I'm building a house in a hurricane zone and I just started and the hurricane is 5 days out? I'm going to skip quantitative and go right to risk response planning. Then I will implement risks and monitor them. Now here's what that looks like. I collected all the risks in my risk register. That was an output of identify risks. Then I'll use the qualitative approach, notice the numbers, to rack and stack them, and I'll have a cutoff line. And the ones in blue are the ones I'm going to then assess for further quantitative analysis, probably if it's worth the time. Or am I going to go right to risk response planning, or am I going to put, and then the rest of them in red, I will add to a watch list, right? And I will check that watch list weekly. Here's a typical probability and impact matrix. Could use numbers too. Now this, when I do quantitative analysis, right? Remember we said risk by definition is an uncertainty. And here's how it's expressed in the term called expected monetary value, or EMV. And EMV equals probability times impact. Now, in this process of plan risk responses, I wanted to remind you of some very important definitions that will be on the exam, I have no doubt. One is a fallback plan. A fallback plan is what we would do if a contingency plan that we put in place didn't work. That would be a fallback plan. A secondary risk are risks that develop because we implemented that risk, that contingency plan, that risk response, right? Now, contingency reserves, we've talked about many times. There are two types of reserves: contingency reserves, which you own, and management reserves, which management owns, right? So with contingency reserves, I want to use them for the risk they're identified. Otherwise, and I've seen this on many tests, that money doesn't go back into your budget. It goes back to the company, right? You want to keep good track of that. And then, of course, there are residual risks. Those are risks that can't be eliminated or exploited via any of the strategies. I kind of see it as milk at the bottom of the milk jug. Yes, it's real milk, but the milk jug essentially is empty. Nobody is going to hold the milk jug upside down and pound it 5 times for the residual milk. You throw it away, or recycle it. It's probably better. Anyhow, so there are strategies, though, for my risk responses. And notice these strategies are for individual threats. These strategies are for individual opportunities. So I can escalate, avoid, transfer, mitigate, or accept. Notice that accept is in both of them, right? Which means I can do nothing, let it happen. And if I avoid the threat, I am actually taking action not to do something that would make that risk be created. I'm avoiding it. Transferring risk is like to a third party in insurance. Now, I have this slide because I wanted to show you, yes, there are individual threats, and these are my strategies marked with an X. And for opportunities, these are my strategies. We just had a slide on it seconds ago. But notice in the PMBOK guide, we'll also talk about overall risk. It's a sense of risk, and it kind of merges the concepts. So you want to take a look at that yourself. Now, we did talk about contingency reserves, where I found, or my team found the risk. We prioritized it. We created a response. And notice that risk can be a threat. So I've given some money because I've justified it to my sponsor in advance to assess that risk, like a hurricane, or to take advantage of an opportunity, like a sale on lumber if I'm building a house, once it's justified. Now, in management reserves, nobody wants to go to the boss and have to explain why something happened and you didn't foresee it. That's really what's going on here. So come with your reports and paperwork. Let them know what happened. They probably have had some money set aside anyhow. But who knows? Good luck to you. Then keep this in mind. Risk is actually going to decrease over time, right? The length of your project. So the chance of a risk happening is higher early on in the project. But notice that the cost of fixing a risk goes up over the length of the project. If you find it late and you have to fix it. The same thing happens if you find a requirement late. The cost goes up to your schedule and your budget and some other things, okay? It's a common pattern. We already talked about individual risks, which is what the risk register addresses. But then you always, as a project manager, want to consider overall project risk. Project uncertainty as a whole. So a risk might not be a big deal to me, but when I combine them with 3 or 4 other risks, that makes my spidey sense tingle. A couple of final terms just to mention in our final minute or so: variability risk and ambiguity risk, right? Ambiguity risk and variability risk is like the weather, right? We just don't know. And then project resiliency uses the term unknowable unknowns, like we didn't have enough to go through. All right, here's your quick summary. I know I've enjoyed it. I hope you have too.